Alright guys, so today we're getting into graphing, chapter 4 here. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about how you would graph a sine and cosine graph with an amplitude and period change. But first, let's figure out what any of that stuff means. So the period, which is denoted by the variable uppercase t, is a function, a function is periodic if it repeats itself. We say that the period is the x value, that is the distance of the graph before it repeats. You'll see, if you're in physics, you see this a lot in pendulums and things of that nature. Amplitude. Amplitude is the amount of displacement up or down from the middle of the graph, and it is always considered a positive value. So I'll show you this in class. It's kind of a cool little thing to see where or how sine and cosine graphs are used. Same thing here, it relates back to what we were just covering with the unit circle. But here's what a graph will look like. So key things to know here with a sine graph. It's starting at an intercept, and then it travels around, and then once it gets to here, then you'll see it starts to repeat itself. So this distance here is considered one period, and you'll see that from 0 to 2 pi. So the period here equals 2 pi, and then we're looking at amplitude. Amplitude is from the center line up, so it's that measurement here. This little thing's kind of in the way, but it's 1 here. So the amplitude would equal 1. So that's a basic sine graph. Here's a cosine graph. The key differences now is it starts, when you're at the y-axis, it's starting at 1, comes down, comes back up, stops there before it repeats itself. If you notice from this point to this point would be the same again. So we're looking at period again. It goes from there to there, which is 2 pi. And we're still looking at an amplitude from here to here, where amplitude would equal 1. Here's what they would look like if you threw them on the same graph. And so if I draw the one period of sine again, and I compare it to one period of cosine, we'll start back here, just so you can get a general idea. What's the main difference between those two graphs? I mean, think about it. They're basically the same thing. One's just offset. One's shifted to the right, or it's actually to the left. Sorry. One is shifted to the left by what equates to half a pi. Otherwise, they are the same thing. So how we're graphing? First of all, knowing where its intercept is on the y-axis is important, because that's our starting point. And so then, from our starting point, it follows this basic pattern: intercept maximum, intercept minimum. It doesn't always start at the same place, but it will follow that pattern. So if you're thinking about it again, if I look at my sine, the red graph here, it starts here at the intercept maximum, intercept minimum, intercept maximum, intercept minimum, and so on. Cosine, normally you would start here in the y-axis, so it starts at a max, intercept minimum, intercept maximum, intercept minimum, and so on. So here's how you find some values for when you're trying to graph. So the period is 2 pi divided by b, where you see b is the number being multiplied by the x in both of these equations. And the amplitude is the number that's being multiplied to the sine or the cosine function. So it's the number that's being multiplied here in the front. So I'll show you this in class. It's kind of cool to see how the amplitude affects the different graphs. So here's how we're going to graph. We're going to draw our x and y axis. We're going to plot the period all the way to the right. We're then going to cut that number in half. That's going to be the midpoint of our period. And cut that in half again, and that's going to be a quarter of a point, or 1/4. And then that's the scale factor, meaning that's what the graph is going to go up by on the x-axis. And we're going to count out all of our points to make sure we have all of them, and then we're going to follow that intercept maximum, intercept minimum pattern to graphing. So you can take a second, pause the video, write that down, and we'll go on. Here's the next one. So I want to graph one period of this. Sine y equals 2 sine of 3x. So if I'm looking at this, hopefully you'll notice right away amplitude is that. So that's 2. the period is 2 pi over that number, which is 3, so it's 2/3 pi, or 2 pi over 3. So when we graph, we're going to put the point of our period all the way out to the right, so that's 2 pi over 3. We're then going to cut that in half. How I would cut this in half is I would actually take that guy and multiply it by half. It makes your life a lot easier. So if you multiply it by half, you would get 2 pi over 6. Multiply that guy by half, and you end up with pi over 6. So pi over 6 is our scale factor. And so that means we're missing a point here. So we're starting at 0 here, then 1 pi over 6, 2 pi over 6. We'll come up with 3 pi over 6 there. And then this 4 pi over 6, which is 2 pi over 3. So then on the y-axis, let's place our amplitude point. So the highest it goes up is to 2. It will also then go down to -2. It's -1. Oops, that's +1. I don't know why I just almost made that a negative. +1. Okay. So then, next is our graph. So this is a sine graph. So we said sine starts on the y-axis at intercept, and then goes to a maximum value, intercept, minimum value, intercept. And we draw a line. This is kind of hard to freehand with the mouse, but that's okay. Put arrows on the ends. Make sure we have the arrows there, because this line does technically continue to infinity in both directions. And voila, you have your sine graph. That's pretty much it. Alright, we try cosine here. So first, our amplitude is going to be a little bit weird, just because that's a fraction. So we're going to have 4/3. And even though that's 4/3 and it's kind of goofy, it doesn't actually affect how we do the graph. So amplitude equals 4/3. Period would be 2 pi over 1/3, which is the same as, instead of dividing by a third, you can multiply by 3. So that would end up being 6 pi. So that means 6 pi goes all the way out here to the right. Now we cut everything in half. So half would be, we can put it as 6 pi over 2, or you could just call it 3 pi, that doesn't matter. Cut it in half again. That's 3 pi over 2. So then that's 3 pi over 2, 6 pi over 2. That would be 9 pi over 2. And then 12 pi over 2, which is 6 pi. So all those are going up, they're properly spaced. And we're just drawing in the cosine graph. So cosine, we said, starts at a max, intercept, minimum, intercept, maximum. And we draw our line. That's it. Here's your cosine graph. So here's the homework for this chapter. The graphs aren't the best in the book. We'll actually do a lot of worksheets from here on out, but give these a shot. Let me know how it goes, and we'll do some practice tomorrow in class.